Great. Hello, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn on No Code, Low Code. And thanks for joining us today on this beautiful, warm October day in Montreal. You can be international, but we're here in Montreal, coming live. I'm Leanne, a solution architect here at Osadea, and I will be your host for today. My experience includes being self-taught in development, as well as wanting to know more about development because I wanted to add more features to tools that I was using, which then led me into the world of building websites, project management, and subsequently helping other companies scale by leveraging the tools that they were already using and automating the heck out of other manual processes. But to be honest, I only learned what I needed, so I definitely couldn't pass a Google coding test. But because I had gotten so far without actually knowing development, it kind of piqued Osadea's interest. And now here at Osadea, we're building the no-code, low-code division, which really fits into the mission here because here at Osadea, it's a custom software development shop that creates mobile and web applications. It's usually custom made to each business's needs. So it could be complex needs in manufacturing, construction, mining, and more. For today's session, it might be a bit of a data dump for those who are new to the concept, but by the end of it, you'll not only have real-world examples to draw inspiration from, but I'll also share access to our internal visual map of no-code, low-code tools, as well as a weekly database that's like updated weekly with everything else we find and that we try. So let's talk no-code, low-code. The industry as a whole is valued at such a high amount that if you converted it to cash, you could buy 100 private islands, a trip to the moon, and still have money left over. But before we go into why that is, let's talk about what it is. Using GitHub as the source of truth here, no code starts by writing absolutely nothing. And then you build on it. You use your imagination and you build on that idea, deploy it to the world. And if you think about it, the possibilities here are absolutely endless. This, but not really. kind of the truth, but not really the truth. No code actually starts by just using a drag and drop builder. It helps you extend the functionality of a tool using something that's very easy to use. Likewise, low code is the same thing, but the functionality can be expanded on by using the drag and drop builders or adding your own custom code or different scripts to make it do exactly what you want. Both are great for what we're calling citizen developers, meaning people who don't have certification in any kind of programming languages, and it's also great for developers as well. It's not exclusive, it's inclusive. Some no-code apps have low-code functionality and vice versa. This is often why you'll hear them used together, no-code, low-code, or the acronym NCLC. Now, here's the thing. No-code, low-code didn't just appear out of nowhere this year and got super popular. It was actually here from way back when in the early 90s. Back then, B2C software started to boom. Microsoft created their Adobe, their suite. Adobe started working their magic. And around 97-ish, RPG Maker was born. And there's a little picture of me creating my first role-playing game without knowing how to code, just dragging pixel art around the screen. 10 years later, the world survived an event. They survived Y2K. And there was another surge in web-based managing content. We had the birth of WordPress. Google Sheets was released and out in the wild, and tools like Moodle, I've included here, were created. Moodle was a learning management system. It was kind of early for its time. You could create quizzes, you can upload videos, you can do attendance and things like that, even had like a kind of messaging board feed within the platform. I put it here as an example to remind us that sometimes these technologies are available, but they may not be available to the end consumer. They may just be available for certain industries that might have the funding for that tech. Anyways, tack on another 10 years and you get the birth of e-commerce and a lot of these tools to do that. WooCommerce was a very popular WordPress plugin. It allowed people with a WordPress website to have a store, similar to Shopify. We also had Webflow, who came out as a competitor to WordPress, saying that they are the more modern content management system. And Zapier came in to kind of help everyone connect their tools. So if you had a legacy accounting system, but you needed to connect it to a form that you had on your Webflow website, you could use Zapier to do something like that. These types of technologies became so popular that Forrester, which is a marketing analysis and reporting company, they had to group them all together under some kind of term. They called it low code. But the term no code actually had existed 30 years before that by James Martin. He wrote an application development book, and he was addressing the possibility of not having enough developers in the future to address the needs that we would have. Anyways, moving on. We're at the end of 2010s. 2010s means COVID hits, and COVID was a complete catalyst for change. Everyone was now working remotely, and as a result, trying to solve problems with whatever tools they could. Some teams even experienced more technical debt as they were trying to address incoming concerns and clear the backlog. This led from a shift from custom coded solutions for everything to solutions that would be deployed with minimal strain on the team. For example, instead of having a back and forth between teams about a lander, they would say, okay, let's use a no-code or low-code tool to deploy this lander website so we can get some leads. And that saved a lot of time, saved in some cases 60% in development time. And that's why you'll see that number kind of floating around. This is also why other companies like Gartner, which is a market analysis reporting company, they expect no-code, low-code to bring in about $187 billion by 2027. So if you converted that to cash, you could get a private island, which would be around $65 million. A trip to the moon, when I Googled it, was $150 million, and you'd still have a lot of money left over. Okay, now we're caught up on context. Let's take a look at some examples of no-code or low-code in the wild. As we're going through this next bit, feel free to add your questions into the chat as they come up. That way, when we get to the Q&A part, we can just start from the top of the questions and go down. All right, Microsoft Power Apps. This allows users to create chatbots, scrape the web, connect different tools. In the example that you're seeing flashing on the screen, it was used as a company hub for news, time tracking, even a gratitude program where each employee got a virtual amount of money that they could give to other employees as a thank you. And if you were gifted money, you could cash out with an Amazon gift card or things like that. Likewise, within the Microsoft 365 suite of tools, you can connect SharePoint, Dataverse, and all these other types of internal tools within that suite to help with task management, generate invoices, inventory tracking, and more. Similarly, Google has their own version of this app builder. It's called AppSheet, and it has some similar features to Microsoft Power Apps. You can do what I already mentioned in Power Apps within AppSheet, but there's other cases in AppSheet that include tracking IT tickets, expenses, creating an easy-to-use facility map for inspections, other reporting, image capture, and a bunch of other things that you can do with the map. For example, scheduling pickups and drop-offs of drivers or coordinating move-in and move-out dates with tenants. Another example of a no-code, low-code tool is Directus, which is a headless CMS. It allows developers to create a CMS without changing their current database structure. It can be used as a digital asset management system like a web, blog, or even small things like pretty links. And the reason I kind of keep the, let's move that out of the way here. The reason I kept the spaghetti code CMS link in there is also a reminder. There's a lot of no-code, low-code apps out there or tools that do allow you to build the world, but they don't always let you see what the code is. You don't always get to export that and upload that to your own server. So that is a specific feature that you'd have to look for in each of your tools. And Directus as an example, you can see what's underneath the hood. So that's why they say it's no spaghetti code. Moving onwards, we have the idea of always using your own system. So Directus allows you to use your existing database. And there is another tool called Obviously AI that allows you to import your data set. So if you have 1,000 rows of data on your sales or your forecasting, you can import it in, and it uses machine learning to make analysis. It's good for predictions, figuring out buyer personas, churn rates, and things like that. And you won't actually need to understand how machine learning works. You just have to upload and see the analysis. I promised myself that I wouldn't go too overboard with examples. So this next one has a couple of easy to use tools that make complex concepts super simple and accessible. Again, questions in the chat and I'll try to help out as best as I can. So let's go. Smart Suite, it falls into the CRM database arena. It's a hybrid of ClickUp, Airtable, Zapier. It can be used for things like project management and transitioning from like using 3 different apps to just one. Apply.io, which we'll see cycling through, it's still in beta, but it's a pretty neat concept because it's being used by large organizations to act as a connector, but in a way that it goes into your UI. So for example, you can have a Pipedrive or another tool, and you can add a button into your Gmail that connects to Pipedrive or connects to QuickBooks. You can offer refunds within your Gmail account or wherever you want those integrations to exist. Apply.io does that. Softer.io allows you to create websites with membership options, collect payments. It's all drag and drop ready to go. Jasper AI is pretty interesting. It allows you to generate ad copy, blog articles, and the like. In the video that we'll see kind of going through this cycle, you'll see that you can type in very little and it'll just generate a full blog post for you. So you can go and edit it, speeds up content production. Bannerbear, which you also saw there, is automatically generate video for you. So an example use case is if you like Twitter and you use Twitter and you also use LinkedIn, you can like tweets, and every time you like a tweet, it gets added to a database. And then at the end of the week, Bannerbear takes all those tweets and makes a LinkedIn carousel post with each of them as a slide in the carousel. So that's also an option. There's a lot of neat stuff happening in the AI NPC world, interactive voice chats, assistants, new CSS alternatives like BuilderX, where you can drag and drop a build and then export that code. A lot of things are stepping up to the plate with no code, low code. And now for the thing that keeps me up at night. In a good way though, or I don't know, maybe I need sleep sometimes, so maybe it's not such a good way. Anyways, it's called Midjourney and it uses a technology I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Here's a screen recording of my phone. I typed in a prompt, added anime for kicks, and then hit send. There's a whole world of prompt crafting that we're not going to get into today, but you can see with my minimal effort what it created. And here are some upscaled images of what was generated as well. These AI art generation tools like Midjourney, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, they're all becoming more and more popular. Jasper AI, which I mentioned earlier, that does AI written ad copy or blog writing, they also have now added art generation to their tool. So you can create your ad assets by writing it there and also generate images at the same time. So it's pretty big. All right, those are all the examples I have for now. And you can see that this kind of scope of no-code tools is pretty big. It's really hard to even just choose one tool to talk about and walk through. So I've got 3 tips to help us kind of navigate the space, or if you're trying to get into it, how to figure out where to go. Tip number 1 is to define exactly what you're looking for. As I mentioned earlier, some platforms don't allow you to export that code. So if that's something that's super important, definitely look for that feature and make sure that those features are in the tool at the price that you're willing to pay. Likewise, if you don't need those features, great. You can use something simpler like maybe Softer.io, drag and drop, build and deploy, and you're good to go. Number 2, I'd say give yourself some time. I promise you all those blogs that are saying you can build this in 2 seconds, you can build a TikTok app in 3 minutes, they're all lies. Okay, maybe not entirely lies, but kind of. And I'll give you an example. AppSheet, which I do like, they have a 5-step guide. In step 1, they say, step 1, set up your data. And if you've ever used a spreadsheet in your life, you know that step 1, setting up your data, includes formatting the spreadsheet, figuring out the permissions, figuring out the relations between the tables. It's a lot of steps. So be patient with yourself and give yourself time to look through the platform. Don't try to keep up with the tutorials because those are kind of made for marketing purposes, but know that there is a learning curve for a lot of these things, and it's okay. Number 3, I'd say shop like a marketer. Don't settle for the first page of Google. What often happens is when you're looking for something, you'll see SEO articles that are based on your locale, which is great. And also sometimes companies have a bigger budget. So I'll just kind of show you a bit of the map here. When you are searching for tools, try to always look for the competitors. An example here in Canada is we have, if we search, we'll see Flutterflow, Bubble, Adalo. These are great tools. But let's say you want something that's free and you can maybe have the code yourself or do something a little more complex. There's AppGyver. AppGyver is not really known here in Canada. It's very popular in Finland. SAP, which is an ERP kind of provider like NetSuite, they purchased AppGyver because they saw the promise in being able to create your own apps. So something like AppGyver would be great to use. You saw a glimpse of our no-code, low-code tool, and this is a glimpse of the giant database that you'll get access to at the end of this. So that's a lot to see. That's a lot to choose from, a lot of code, a lot of different tools, and it's a lot to take in. But there you have it. That is the beginning, an intro to the no-code, low-code space. So what are your questions? And feel free to write them in the chat. One of the questions I've been asked before is, will no-code or low-code replace developers? The answer is no. We always need developers to create these tools. They're creating the low-code, no-code tools, and it's actually used in addition to their development. Not every project requires custom code, but not every project can be fulfilled with low-code, no-code tools. What are the limitations of low-code, no-code? Yeah, this is a good question. It depends on the tool and it depends on the project. For example, you may be able to start an MVP with very little amount of money, like 20 bucks or 30 bucks a month with a tool. But then when you want to scale it, you might be limited by their database. Or when you start to scale it, the cost of hosting it with that provider might be astronomical. So there are limits based on the tools and based on the project. So it's always a good idea to kind of scope that out. Tip number one, see what you need and how long you need to make it last. Another question, how do you handle selecting a tool to help your client self-maintain apps? Yes, this one is a good question. It's hard. There are a lot of tools and I personally have my own preferences. I try not to let that get in the way. What we do is we kind of break down what it is that they need right now, what they would like in the future. We look at what the design team is suggesting if they want to create something very, very unique, or if they're okay with just changing fonts and colors. That will really dictate the starting base tool. After that, we then choose the tool and go about it. So it becomes easier to narrow it down. So for example, if it's, I want to build a TikTok app, but it's only for 100 people, then maybe Flutterflow, because it'll be easy to set up and deploy and use the Firebase as like a database. If it's something that they want to create like a big enterprise app, maybe we would go with a software or tool that is more enterprise friendly. If it's just, we need to automate some stuff in our backend, but we also want anyone to be able to go in and fix these automations, maybe we'd use a tool like Make or Zapier to help automate that. So it always depends on the use case and what the needs are. All right, any more questions? Last call. If you have a project idea, where could you start? Well, first you can start with us today. You can send us a message. At the end of the slide, I'll have a little QR code so you can contact us, even just for ideas, to bounce ideas off people. We're here to help. Likewise, if you have an idea, but you're not too sure and you need some time, you can take time to research and then speak with one of the experts in the field or Google. There are so many tools. How do you know which one is best fitted for one project? Yeah, this is a challenge because sometimes it comes down to trial and error. That's why I'm very lucky to be here at OSADE. I get to try a lot of these tools. I get to see the strengths and weaknesses of each tool, what to use, when to use it. If you're doing this solo on your own, I would say use those free trials to get started and try different tools. However, the learning curve might be there. So it might take longer. You have to invest a little more time in figuring out how each tool works and getting to different blockers. An example for this is I tried to build a digital asset manager recently using Glide when I realized right nearing the end that it wasn't going to work for me because of the limitations with the updates, the amount of updates you're allowed per row. That was unfortunate, but it was a great learning thing. So I would say if you're unsure, send us a message. We have the experience to kind of help you out, help you decide what tool might be great to go with. And yeah. Any other questions? Welcome. All right, so I'm guessing that's it. We're going to close up a little early, give you a few minutes left in your lunch. Thank you so much for joining us today on this crash course style intro. I hope it was enough to get you curious. And also, let me show that QR code before I forget. For access to our no-code, low-code map, you can see the QR code here. Scan it, you'll be able to see it. The database is pretty good as well. So if you have an idea, if you're thinking of starting a podcast, you can just search in the database podcasts and you'll see some of the tools that we're playing with for podcasts as well. And if you want to contact Osadea for anything, questions, concerns, ideas, brainstorming, we're there. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you guys, all of you, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.